The difference between you doing exactly what you want with your life is only one cycle. It's only ever one cycle away. Might not be this cycle, but within the next cycle, you're probably, going to be in a position to be able to the hell you want to do in life. In these last few cycles, like the 2017 people would have been looking at people with 100 Bitcoin going, "Oh, I'll never get to 100 Bitcoin." The 2020 people are looking at people with 10 Bitcoin going, "Oh," each cycle we see that number diminishes. So this cycle, get to 0.1. So potentially, with Bitcoin having feathered the nest a little bit, more, I potentially don't have to go to the job that I'm enjoying less, and I can point my time and energies towards something that's serving me a little bit more. When your money is corrupted and co-opted, and it's really hard to find value in the world, this is what we as Bitcoiners propose Bitcoin fixes. It's the thing I love the most about Bitcoin is just it gives you optionality. Like we've gone only in a number of years from a family that lives paycheck to paycheck to a family that has options.
To give the few people that haven't seen the first episode and for the people that aren't aware of you, give them some background of who you are and why you're excited about Bitcoin.
Yeah, no problem. My name's Daz B. I am co-founder of Looking Glass Education and co-author of a book on Bitcoin, B is for Bitcoin. But by day, I'm a Sparky by trade, which is Australian for electrician and electrical engineer. So sort of come at Bitcoin from an investment lens. Landed on Bitcoin around circa 2020, was pretty prime for the message. So fell down the rabbit hole pretty quickly. And, fast forward a couple of years and it played just a massive role in my life, my family's life, and opened up a whole heap of opportunities, which I'm sure part of which we'll get into, tonight around what we're doing this year, which is, traveling around Australia. I'm Australian, a funny accent if you couldn't tell. We've taken the opportunity to pull the kids out of school for the year and travel this great big country of ours in our caravan. So.
Yeah, I think you mentioned it in the last time. It was inspired by Daniel Prince, I think.
Yeah, it sure was. And I challenge anyone to go and read his book, Choose Life, and not get majorly orange pilled on that concept of choosing life, right? and opting out of the school system and investigating all those things like traveling full time with your family is just an incredible opportunity, and we're just enjoying every minute of it, to be honest with you. We're about 6 months into that journey now, and last time we spoke, we were just getting in the final preparations to hit the road, so we were still based in Fiat land then, and now we're right in amongst, so we're about 6 months into our trip.
Interesting. Yeah, it's like this is kind of, we talk a lot about like what Bitcoin is and where Bitcoin is going. And I'm sure we also talk a lot about like all the things that going on that you can do with borrow against the Bitcoin, what's going on with treasury companies and all those things. But that's the real Bitcoin thing that you can do with Bitcoin. Like take your family, travel around with them. There's no borders. I don't know like where you all travel around and where you're going, but this is the main thing you want to do with Bitcoin. You don't want to spend more time in Bitcoin. You kind of want to get Bitcoin, understand Bitcoin, so you can have more time back into your life and with your family. So I love that. And I think that's that's the most Bitcoin podcast we can do with someone that's actually on the road and spending time with the family.
Yeah, I think above everything, and I say this quite often, I think the thing I love the most about Bitcoin is just it gives you optionality. Like we've gone only in a number of years from a family that lives paycheck to paycheck to a family that has options, and we're by no stretch of the imagination, whales. But it has given us options. It's been able to provide a nest egg for our family, and it's been able to it's enabled us to sit back and objectively look at what matters to us in life, and give us some options to be able to say, well, the Fiat life, given someone 60 hours a week of my time, is no longer serving me. And I wouldn't have been able to do that without Bitcoin.
Love that. And so you started the journey, I think in February, you said, traveling around. Is it only Australia? I mean, only Australia. Australia is huge, but you're traveling around Australia. And this for now set a year. So you're kind of halfway through this journey. What's kind of like your journey has been so far? And then what kind of have you learned from that?
Yeah, like you say, Australia's huge. And we've been on the road now 6 months and we've barely seen half of it. And there's plenty we've missed in between. But essentially, the idea was to take around about a year. So it'll be just a little bit short in the end. We're planning on heading back home in December, but we left in February and we'll be back home where we're based in Far North Queensland back in December. But it's just been an incredible opportunity. So we've basically gone from where I live in Far North Queensland, which is the east coast of Australia, up the top, and we've hugged the east coast. We've gone over to Tasmania, come back, and we've basically hugged the coast. We like surf and sand and sunshine. We've gone over to Western Australia, over to their capital over there, Perth, and then we've basically taken a similar route and gone through a little bit more of a country route on the way back through. We've been to the snow. We're from a hot tropical climate. I've seen snow 3 times in my life. So it was a great opportunity to take the kids, and we went and played around in the snow in country Victoria for a while. And now we're sort of on the, about the midway point back on the East Coast and getting back to warmer weather. It's winter here for us. Winter's still quite a nice time of year anywhere in Australia, but we're starting to head back to the warmer weather because we've been cold. We're from a tropical climate and we've been feeling it. But it's just been 6 months on the road. We'll end up traveling until around mid-December, and then I'll take up some Fiat jobs again, but we'll be based out of what's called the Sunshine Coast, which is sort of southeast pocket of Queensland, before we make the trek back north towards the end of the year.
Has this trip or like this experience in any way, shape, or form influenced your thinking of Bitcoin at all?
Hasn't necessarily influenced my thinking of Bitcoin. It's definitely influenced my thinking of Fiat, in terms of really starting to look now around what the future looks like for us as a family. So very much keen. My wife did work somewhat prior to us leaving. I think we won't bother going back to that life for her. She's a fantastic mother, and I think this is probably one of the most deplorable things of a Fiat system is this attack on motherhood. Motherhood should be celebrated. It's a hard job. It's often a thankless job, and she's phenomenal at it. And our kids are better off for having her around in more of a full-time capacity. So that's definitely something that we'll be looking at when we get back is potentially she won't return to work. And then it's also just, making us look like at our Fiat lives and saying, well, what does it look like for us in terms of what do we need? What's our base costs? All that sort of thing is starting to weigh up. There's obviously a lot of really interesting developments in the lending space and everything happening in and around Bitcoin now. And I think, that'll just allow us to approach that, the intertwine with the Fiat lifestyle a little bit differently. So, I'll never retire. I'm not the retirement kind of guy. I think I'd go stir crazy if I retired, but it does allow us to then direct our energies toward things that are serving us. What may interest us, right? So it's not that I have to go stamp the time card in from a 9-to-5 job anymore. I may be able to take my foot off the throttle a little bit and enjoy a bit more of a work-life balance and start leaning into some more of that family stuff. And again, it's just like Bitcoin's enabled that for us. Like it's a phenomenal asset. It's money. It's the best store of energy, of time and energy that we've ever faced as a human race. And now, all us Bitcoiners are starting. If you've been around, and it only takes a cycle, it's really quite mind blowing. Really, is the difference between you doing exactly what you want with your life is only one cycle. It's only ever one cycle away. Might not be this cycle, but within the next cycle, you're probably going to be in a position to be able to do whatever it is the hell you want to do in life.
I love that. You said you're not the retire kind of a guy. What do you mean by that?
Look, I'll always hustle. I've ever since I've had a job ever since I was a kid, so I think my first job was 9 or 10 years old. Like, I've always loved having money and having the things that money buys, right? So I'll never retire and do nothing. It'll just be, whether it's more into my music. So, I do gigs part-time as just part of my other, Fiat life, but it's something I enjoy doing, and why not get paid something that you enjoy? So potentially, with Bitcoin having feathered the nest a little bit, more, I potentially don't have to go to the job that I'm enjoying less, and I can point my time and energies towards something that's serving me a little bit more,
For me, retirement is the art of getting paid for something that you love to do.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And, Bitcoin's such an amazing space and there's so many opportunities in and around Bitcoin, that you can make Bitcoin part of your life, and that's something that interests me in terms of, and I've got a pretty unique skill set in terms, we spoke a little bit about this on the last pod, is in and around the energy space and Bitcoin mining and what Bitcoin mining means for energy grids and energy markets. So that's probably somewhere I would point more of my energies towards when I don't have to worry about being at a job from, 8 till 5.
Yeah, you can probably easily start something in the mining space. There's a lot of ground to cover. I think sometimes we underestimate how early we are in this space. And with that, not only the thing that we always talk about, the price appreciation and how many more people that come into Bitcoin, but also how many more business models will be deployed within the Bitcoin ecosystem. And with Bitcoin being early, Bitcoin mining is also early, and all the mining companies, like all the things that you basically need with mining and energy, I think we haven't seen like 1% of what's possible. So it's probably smart if you know the potential of Bitcoin, and you save your financial energy in Bitcoin, that you also see, okay, what can I do business wise, career wise, whatever your thing is in Bitcoin. If you have skill sets that might be valuable to the Bitcoin ecosystem, that's probably the exponential growth onto the exponential growth. So like Bitcoin itself has an exponential growth, but if you also are working into Bitcoin and saving into Bitcoin, that can really skyrocket your whole life and give you even more freedom that you might not even need.
Yeah, 100%. And the other avenue to that is also weaving Bitcoin into what it is that you do, so from starting a business, or if you already operate a business, I think a lot of us sometimes are guilty of, particularly, Bitcoiners I speak to day to day, trying to get a job in Bitcoin, like, what can I do in Bitcoin? But on the flip side of that is like, how can I interweave Bitcoin into what it is that I already do, and I think that's really the key, because, you hone skill sets over years and years and years, and Bitcoin really does interweave with most aspects of society. Money is such a fundamental, core of how society works that, Bitcoin is money. So it just is second nature that Bitcoin can interweave into anything that you do, from day to day. And I think that's probably a key aspect as well.
100% agree. One other aspect that you mentioned is interesting, is bringing the family unit back together. The Fiat aspect of kind of making a family poor enough so both parents have to work, so that the kids are not at home anymore. And this is something I think has probably really bad implications long term for society. I don't have any studies or proof or anything like that. That's just like a subjective feeling that I have, that if there's one parent at home, or maybe even like both, and really parenting the kids when they are in their crucial years, between like, I don't know, 0 and 15 years old, wherever you want to draw that line. I think it's a very important thing to do. And if you have a mother at home that is really good at her job as a mother, and I think we also should acknowledge that like mothering is probably like one of the hardest jobs you can possibly do. This is something extremely important. But this is, of course, only possible if one salary can support 3, 4, 5, 6 people, depending on how many kids you have, which is in a fiat world hard, especially if you save in fiat and not in Bitcoin. That's something that those are like the indirect implications of sound money that I'm really hopeful for, that I'm really positive for. So I'm glad to see that we have Bitcoiners like you, where we actually see this like, oh yeah, he adopted Bitcoin, he traveled around the world, and that he brings the family unit back together. And yeah, it actually makes the family better, it makes the lives better, and with that also the kids better, and with that the next generation better. I mean, that's the most low time reference things you can do.
100%. And, my partner in crime, Seb Bunny, co-author of the book and co-founder of Looking Glass Education, he's written a phenomenal book on just that subject called The Hidden Cost of Money. And I strongly encourage anybody who hasn't read it, go out and grab a copy. And it's very well evidenced and very well researched. Basically the family unit, right? And how money's basically eroded that over time when we operate on a fiat system. And one of the most probably impactful things around that is you just mentioned it before, is if your parents are spending so much time at work trying to just keep the roof over their head, and mainly, everybody in the Bitcoin space know that's due to inflation, right? And fiat currency, they print it out of thin air, makes it so much harder to get ahead. It's forced both parents into the workforce, so we spend so much time trying to make money, trying to keep money, that we then entrust our children to other people, typically daycares, before and after school care. Like, it's not just enough now that your kids are in school for 6, 7, and 8 hours a day. They're also in these before and after school programs, and we're starting to lose the connection between parents and children. And children are then turning towards their peers, and they're connecting these peer relationships with their peer groups and people who aren't their parents. And this is having a dramatic downstream impact on whole things from mental health through to just the fundamental parent-child bond through to adolescence. And, it could be argued that this is where we start to see some of this really worrisome trends in society where, kids don't even know what gender they are and stuff like that, and I don't want to get too political or dug down in those weeds necessarily, but really when you start tearing all the layers back, money sits at the root of all these things. So when your money is corrupted and co-opted and it's really hard to find value in the world, that's what, this is what we as Bitcoiners propose Bitcoin fixes. It's the main way that us as humans communicate value to each other. And when that's distorted, it has all these downstream effects. And one of the, the like we've just mentioned, family unit is such, it's been eroded since 1970. It's just been a downward slippery slope of the family unit getting pulled apart, more divorce rates going through the roof, mother and fathers, they're stressed out of their heads about money, they're working, but the jobs don't stop. The washing doesn't stop. The food doesn't stop. So you fall into other bad habits around eating poorly, and when mothers, I'm a shit mum. Openly and freely admit that I am a terrible mother. So without my partner, my kids would suffer. And if she has to go to work for 40, 50, 60 hours a week and then perform all those duties and not getting support by me because I'm actually crap at it, these are all the things that you trade off. And it's easy to understand where that family unit starts to break down when those defined roles are no longer supported.
It's crazy because when you go through the stress and you basically have the two parents working both 40, 50 hours jobs every week. And then you have the kids being basically at school and daycare. So they're also, 40 hours a week away from the parents. Then you have the situation where you just you don't have a family anymore. You have a living situation. You have a living arrangement where you kind of sleep in the same house, but the first 5 days of the week, you don't even see each other that much. And then it's just like Saturday, Sunday quickly. And you probably are also stressed out and tired that you don't do a lot. So it's really interesting seeing this whole family thing, because without being together as a family, are you even a family then? Like, you're just in a living arrangement, weirdly. Like, you don't see each other that much. And yeah, like, and I don't want to be careful, because there might be people listening and seeing like, hey, like I cannot get out of this now. Like, and it can be a frustrating thing, recognizing that, like, oh, it would be great if the mother stays at home, but like, we cannot afford that. And I also sometimes get the comments of saying like, oh, hey, Bitcoin is great, but like I have an income problem and I cannot get more money. And like, yeah, that's a whole nother thing. And I'm always very upfront with that. If you have not enough to save, like Bitcoin will not help you in that regard. But overall, I think if we fix the money long term, those problems will slowly go away. And it's not just about us, it's also about the future generations. It's about, okay, how are the kids from our kids living up, and do they have sound money, and do they have other opportunities? So I try to look at it selflessly and say like, okay, even if my situation right now is not that good, I mean, my personal situation is really good with the Bitcoin podcast. I'm kind of living the dream, but it's like, okay, what can we do to make that whole thing on average better? Like, not just like for one person. And I think, as you said, this like being in Bitcoin for 1 or 2 cycles, that can work magic. If you saved Bitcoin the last 2 cycles, even let's say $50 a week, or $50, I don't know, every second week, the last 8 years. I cannot do the math right now in my head. Maybe if you speak, I will quickly put it in some calculators. But I can imagine that is a whole lot of Bitcoin if you
It'll be
did that
meaningful
for like 2 cycles. Yeah,
and that's the whole point. Like, I mean, you can. What I'm probably more grateful is more people are waking up to the fact that we're on this hamster wheel. And whether you get Bitcoin now or like you say, these people that are in these situations, because they absolutely exist. I was in that situation myself, living sort of pay to pay, not knowing where, the next spare bit of income was. And it's really hard to try and put meaningful change in place when you feel like you're on that hamster wheel, when you don't know there's an alternative solution, when you don't know there's a path, when you don't know there's light at the end of that tunnel. And I think that's what Bitcoin does, is give us that light. And I'm hoping that, over this next sort of cycle, more and more people start to wake up that they are on that hamster wheel and that there is an alternative solution. And I think that's only getting more reinforced by the nation state type of adoption. The political movement in the United States is definitely helping get that message out, as well as, the more of the traditional finance sectors are starting to wake up, starting to talk about it, the BlackRocks of the world, et cetera, giving more education in around what this asset is. And I think, you know yourself, Robin, probably you've made meaningful change to your own life. Once you sort of got that message, you did make the sacrifices. If you're on that, poor situation where you can't save money, putting $10 a week away does nothing. But if you can all of a sudden put that $10 away and it makes meaningful change to your life over 4 or 8 cycles, and it's evidenced and you can see that light at the end of the tunnel, then all of a sudden you'll make that change to find the extra $10. That $10 then becomes $20. And you start to really objectively look at how you're living your life and doing what Grandma told us to do. Keep it lean and safe. When we're operating this fiat lifestyle, when we know $10 a week put in the bank's not going to do anything, it's only going to lose purchasing power, it's really easy to not make the sacrifices and just keep consuming, because it gives you that instant gratification. It's that high time preference versus low time preference. But when you can save in meaningful money like Bitcoin, it does shifts. Like any Bitcoiner you talk to, it's made meaningful changes to their lifestyle in order to stack as much as they can. And it's a pretty phenomenal. It's not a get rich quick scheme, But like you said, it's like 1, 2, okay, maybe possibly 3 cycles. That's only 12 years that you can make absolute meaningful change in your life. And there's not too many Bitcoiners that I know who've had to wait the full 12 years, right? A lot of us are class of 2020, 2024, even, even Bitcoiners as late as this last sort of rise from 80,000 US dollars to where we are today. The people are starting to wake up to this aspect of being able to save money, accrue in purchasing power, and make meaningful change to your lifestyle, no matter what sort of where you're sitting on there. And it's not like you're going to retire tomorrow, but it will absolutely change your life.
I found an interesting one, and I think we can look at it together. It's a DCA. It's actually from the biggest German Bitcoiner. He has a website, and so there's some German words now, but I think they're not necessary. So the English speaking will get it. It's basically we invest $35 a week since the last 8 years, so 2017 to 2025, August. And the fascinating thing, you would have invested $14,000. And today, it's $126,000 with 1.1 Bitcoin. So crazy, you could, if in 8 years with just like $35, which I think is achievable, I would assume for most of the people listening per week to save, and you have more than a Bitcoin. You're freaking whole coin at that point. And 2017, I know it's early. Like I didn't get it in 2017. I started only in 2020. But the same thing will happen. And I had this discussion yesterday with Opti from Simply Bitcoin, if this diminishing returns thing actually is true or not. And I'm not sure. I tend to actually not. But yeah, that is a whole nother discussion. You have a whole Bitcoin at that point, which is crazy. Like that can be like life-changing money right there. To just like have like 100K in your bank account on top of your regular income that can provide the safety net for you to say, hey, I want to try something else. Oh, hey, we need that extra expense for something, that just that extra bit of freedom. So I just wanted to show that like it doesn't even take $50 a week to get the whole Bitcoin. If you do the same thing with $50 a week, I think 50 we said before, you have already 1.5 Bitcoin. You're closing down on the second Bitcoin. So it doesn't take a lot, but it takes patience. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. They want to get it tomorrow. They want to get it like next week, and they cannot wait for like, okay, it takes a week. And the one point that you also said, and I love that one, is over time, because you get hope again, your life gets better. Like you get hope again and you're like, okay. That's how it works. The first time I ever made any money, I got myself from that money a watch. And ever since then, I collect timepieces to remember times where I achieved some milestone. That's why I got the Bitcoin 2025 edition when I went to my first ever American Bitcoin conference. So for me, the Bitcoin watches from Coin Vigilant represents the time that we are living in. For every person that wears a Bitcoin watch, I know they are representing sound money to the outside world. Make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. I know how big of a hurdle it can be to have self-custody, but it's so freaking important to make that first step. We have to make sure it's as easy and simple as possible. And that's exactly what BitBox did. BitBox created the simplest and the easiest hardware wallet to use to get into self-custody. So get yourself a BitBox down from the link in the description. And when you use code Robin, you even get a 5% discount. The most important thing for your Bitcoin journey is not buying Bitcoin, but it's how to keep them. And yes, you have maybe the right tools, but how do you actually go ahead and stick it all together so it's the most secure for you personally? Self-custody is a deeply personalized journey. And the Bitcoin way is helping you exactly finding that correct setup for you personally. They are also helping you with securing your own cybersecurity. And if you want to go one step above all that, you can even get a consultation for a Plan B residency. Go to thebitcoinway.com/Robin and you will get a 30-minute free consultation. I want to tell you about something very special to me. It's called Microseed. If you hold your Bitcoin in self-custody, and you should, you know how critical it is to secure your seed phrase. You should not have them on paper. You should not have them on anything else than titanium. With Microseed, you can engrave your 12 or 24 word seed phrase, the entire seed phrase, onto a 1-inch small washer. Yes, just one washer. All 24 words on that one washer. You can hide that thing everywhere. And even better, you don't need to buy a new kit every time you have to get a new wallet. You can make unlimited backups because Microseed is not selling the washer. Microseed is selling the device that stamps the washer. So you get the full kit with the device, with the washers, with the hammer, with everything you need to get started today. And you can make with that unlimited amount of backups. Go now to microseed.io. Again, that's microseed.io to get your last backup tool you ever need.
Yeah, and I also think it's, I think, from this point on, I quite often tell people, like, maybe one Bitcoin's out of reach for you from this point on. And so sometimes it can be a little bit hard for people to start. I think that it's already run. But, in these last few cycles, like the 2017 people would have been looking at people with 100 Bitcoin going, oh, I'll never get to 100 Bitcoin. The 2020 people are looking at people with 10 Bitcoin going, oh, each cycle we see that number diminishes. Like, so this cycle, get to 0.1. Even that's hard to achieve in some people's minds around trying to stack that much money. But 0.1 will still see you. This ruler doesn't change. It's not elastic like the fiat system. It's a fixed money supply. All you have to do is tether in and ride it up. So it doesn't really matter what you accumulate. It's just the time in the market. And, I'm a bit of I think returns will diminish somewhat over the long term. I mean, I don't think we'll see 100Xs this year, like we've seen in cycles past. I think those days are gone, but it will continue to go up forever. Just like Michael Saylor, that meme, it will go up forever, Laura. It will go up forever because it's a finite supply and we have ever increasing sources of demand. Every day people are waking up to this thing. Institutions want to adopt it. People want to adopt it. Retirement funds want to adopt it. That demand curve is going like that, going parabolic. So if we know the supply is fixed, if not diminishing over time as people lose coins and all that sort of thing, all you need to do is just start buying it and just buy as much as you can that you're comfortable with, and just sit it out for the long term. Like we said, it's not a get rich quick scheme, but it will make meaningful change to your life.
And you also talked about, and I fully agree with that. You also talked about, I asked you what are you thinking in Bitcoin before we started recording? And it was interesting because you said you are more disconnected. You're more not so obsessed with the day-to-day news and the in and outs of Bitcoin. How was that for you? Getting away from the kind of, oh shit, what's Bitcoin doing today? Or oh shit, Michael Saylor bought more Bitcoin, all those things.
It's been really nice. It's been nice to, I'll still listen to the odd podcast here and there. One I always advocate for is Rabbit Hole Recap with Marty Bent, Matt Odell, as a nice, hour to 2 hour long snapshot of what's happening in the space. I think if you listen to nothing else, that would give you a good overview of what's happening. But it's been a really nice disconnect for me, and it's been a nice disconnect from digital, my phone being in my face the whole time, because normally that's how I consume everything, is via mobile phone. So it's been a really nice excuse just to get away from all of that and just completely unplug and be a bit more present. Which, I'm hoping, with the family, it's been a good thing. I'm sure if you ask them, they probably have differing opinions. Dad, just get out of my face for a little while, but put your head back in your phone. But no, I jest. So it's been nice just to sit back and just chill out a little bit and not have to feel like I need to consume mountains and mountains of content to keep on top of this thing. And I still argue that Bitcoin is one of the most transparent assets in the world, and that's why I sleep soundly at night, having quite a large bit of exposure and not have to throw hundreds of hours a week at it now. I think your hundreds of hours are needed initially to get the conviction, to really understand what's under the hood. But once you get a really good grasp on this asset, it is one of the most transparent things. Like if Apple stock were to spew down 25% tomorrow, you won't know about it till their financial filings or the news breaks. But with Bitcoin, you just go to the mempool and you say, hey, is it broken? Look under the hood, check your node. Is it still tick-tocking next blocking? Okay, move on. Come at me. Cheap sats. If you've got any spare change under the couch cushion, you're going to go find it. You're going to buy some more Bitcoin. So I'm really grateful for that it is so transparent. And I think that's the other thing people are starting to wake up to, the fact that it's got no encumbrance. Like it's not controlled. It's not, we're not relying on the trust of any institution or any body or anyone filing, truthful filings on what might be going on in the underlying of the company or anything that happens in fiat land. It's objective truth, and it's, globally distributed, and I run my own copy of this software, and I just go and interrogate that and make sure it's all working fine, and just come back later.
I love that. I think that's where I'm as plugged into Bitcoin news as it gets. I'm talking every day about Bitcoin. I mean, I don't consume news actually in Bitcoin, but they come through the guests to me, weirdly enough. So through the guest, I have my filter of Bitcoin news. But what are the things that still came through to you? Like you said, like treasury companies was one big thing that still came to you.
Yeah, I still keep kind of on top of. I mean, I say I don't consume as much content. I'm still logging into Twitter, probably once a day, but not spending countless hours doom scrolling like I once did. But certainly keeping on top of those other activities in the space. And I spent quite a bit of time thinking about these treasury companies actually. And one of the questions actually I was going to pose to the next guest for you is to ask that person whether they think the treasury companies are the next shit coins of this cycle. And I tend to think they are, if I'm to be a little bit blunt. Don't get me wrong. I think there's definitely, like Michael Saylor is doing with MicroStrategy, is just next level genius, tapping into the fiat markets. But I think a lot of the pretenders who are going to come in the latter half of this cycle, I think they're probably more smoke and mirrors than actual being able to tap. I think that game's a limited game in terms of really being able to tap into these, the preferreds he's issuing, to tap into the private equity markets and the bond markets and all the traditional fiat space. I don't think will be as easily accessed by all these other treasury companies that pop up. And I do, in a way, think they're a distraction. I think, in a way, that's why we're not seeing mempools overflowing, why there's not much activity on there. I think there's a lot of people turning towards the ETFs and these treasury companies to point some of their loose capital towards, because they think they'll ultimately outperform Bitcoin. And if I was to caution anybody listening who's curious in that, is just stack Bitcoin. If you want to have a little bit of a flutter, make it a small percentage of your overall stack. Like your goal should be to accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can in self-custody, and whatever that means for you. But if you want to have a little flutter around the sides, I would stick to the main players, right? But I do think MSTR and the likes of MetaPlanet do have a good shot at outperforming Bitcoin this cycle. However, I still would argue that it should only be a small percentage of your overall stack if you're going to play around in those games.
Treasury companies is really interesting. I feel like they're providing pipes from locked capital that couldn't flow into Bitcoin directly towards Bitcoin. And this is great. But then there's also the question of like, how many of those companies servicing those pipes do we really need? Do we need 25 strategies that basically do the same thing? at some point, I think there will be like a few winners, maybe Strategy, maybe a few others that do those things very well, because there is a very big chunk of money. I think Seyr talked about like 97% of the overall capital that is still locked into instruments that cannot even buy directly Bitcoin. And this is the things where he kind of types in with his pipes, with the strategies, with the how they stretch, strike, stride, like all those option things and all those products preferred from Strategy. Those are really interesting, but I personally don't do anything with them. But it's interesting to kind of get onto this capital. But how many of those pipes do we really need? Like, do we need like, I don't know, 500 of treasury companies? At some point, they will get unprofitable and probably run out of business. And there might be like 2 or 3 that are doing a good job in servicing those pipes. I don't know.
I agree. I think there'll be like a winners take most type of approach. I think there'll be a few dominant players. Obviously, MicroStrategy will be the mainstay, but these other ones that pop up, I still think, it's still a good idea for all companies to stack Bitcoin. I just don't think that being able to tap into that leverage of those market, they won't be open to 1,000 companies, and it'll quickly dilute, and there'll be a couple that'll be able to do it and do it well. And I think MicroStrategy is definitely running at the gates in terms of that. And I would just caution other people, like coming up with the next, I don't know, UK-based company that says they're going to tap into the capital markets and stack Bitcoin in a leveraged way. I would just caution them, because I think that, for people who don't spend a lot of time in the space, it might seem attractive for them to be the next person who can 100x their stack in terms of Bitcoin. Whereas, MicroStrategy can't 100x their total Bitcoin stack from this point in time. So I think sometimes it's attractive to think about, get on the next horse, just like the IPO craze or the ICO craze and the shitcoin craze, and the NFT craze and all these other things. I do tend to think that some of these are a little bit dangerous game to play, and they're basically, a lot of these will pop up. I'm not saying anything about ones that might already be in circulation, but a lot of these will pop up purely to take retail money.
And I think there's like a very important difference that you said there. If a company just exchanges their dollar balance sheet to a Bitcoin balance sheet, like there will be all of the companies will do that at some point. Like that's like a logical thing to do. With treasury companies, I mean more of like, are you trying to tap into leverage intelligent credit products to leverage those things? So this is kind of the servicing pipes that we probably don't need a lot. But every company, like I'm stacking Bitcoin, like with my small podcasting business, I save everything in Bitcoin just as I do personally. So of course, like that, but that's not a treasury company. That's just like a company that has a treasury in Bitcoin.
Definitely agree. There's definitely a distinction between what we're talking about here about tapping into those leveraged markets and those just saving Bitcoin. Because I wholeheartedly agree. I think every company will and should have Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It's the only way to carry, whatever your cash balance is on your balance sheet right now should be in Bitcoin.
100%. You also said that you are looking into, or maybe even doing it, the borrowing against the Bitcoin, the lending products. How do you approach them?
Yeah, not personally doing it yet, but definitely something that's on the radar. I guess just spending a little bit of time researching that space, understanding what type of products there are, and obviously the risk that's associated with all of them, because they all have a degree of risk. Recently just come across a pretty good website called zone21.com, which compares a lot of the Bitcoin lending products. It's not exhaustive, and it's very US centric, but it does have quite a good weighting score in and amongst a lot of those lending products, which I found quite interesting. as well as a bit of a deep dive into what's under the hood in terms of the technology that backs your Bitcoin. So obviously what we learned from the last cycle was it's very, very dangerous to give anyone your keys or control of your Bitcoin. So if you're going to enter into these loan type products, it's really important to understand how they operate and where all your risk lies. So for me, it's interesting. And I think, this next cycle will be the cycle of a severe broadening on those institutional type grade offerings. I think more and more players, as well as the traditional system, will start to come into the fold in terms of what they offer. Everyone wants to get their hands on your Bitcoin, right? Couple of that are sort of standing out to me at the moment, which kind of seem interesting is the ones like, and they've been around a little while, as Debify, Firefish has just come across my radar that I'm digging into. And what I like about those types of things is they're taking that multi-sig type of approach with smart contracts to the way that lending works, so that they don't necessarily custody your Bitcoin. There'll be, whether it's a 3 or 5 or a 2 or 3, and they've all got various technical variations on how they manage that Bitcoin, but it's much more attractive, I guess, in taking that mini script type of approach to managing Bitcoin in terms of, you feed external data in there. There's pre-signed PSBTs that would trigger in certain conditions. You get some Oracle data from the external world on pricing, and then framing them up into a pretty attractive way that these people can't rehypothecate your Bitcoin. And that's really, one of the major concerns for most people is, hey, do you have control of my Bitcoin? And then if you do, are you rehypothecating it? Where more of these products are now coming, about that it's actually impossible for them to rehypothecate your Bitcoin because they don't custody it. So I find it a really interesting space, and I think even this next 12 months, I think we'll see more and more of those type of products pop up. And it's, again, just sort of interesting to me in the sense that, like I spoke about earlier in the pod, is just having optionality in and around your Bitcoin. My goal would be ultimately to never ever sell a single sat. My goal would be to intelligently borrow against my Bitcoin into perpetuity. And it can be a hard concept for people to grok. I often speak to clients and so forth in my role with the Bitcoin advisor, just in around that notion. And it's probably easily expressed in property. Like, a lot of people probably understand the property game about tapping into equity to fund your lifestyle and building a property portfolio where you can continually, sort of tap into that equity to fund your lifestyle and service debt and so forth. And that's essentially the same playbook that I'm hoping to take with my Bitcoin over the longer term, is to start borrowing against it, start, taking my foot off the throttle in the fiat world a little bit, and then use some of those borrowings to help fund lifestyle, pay for holidays, improve your lifestyle, renovations to the house, God forbid. Last thing I want to do, but wifey finds that valuable, so happy wife, happy life, so they say. So, yeah, that's an interesting space for me at the moment.
Happy wife, happy life. I get that. The only problem I have still with those products is I don't find the terms attractive enough currently. Like I would, and actually Saylor posted that picture where he says, what is intelligent credit? And he says, basically a graph of like interest rates and duration of the thing. And he says like above 10 years and under 10%, which would be like amazing. But even coming close to that would be ideal. And most of the products, and I haven't looked into them recently, so maybe they already gotten better, but most of them have like 10, 12, 13, sometimes even like over 15% of interest rates. And then just like for like a year or two, it's too expensive and too short term for me personally right now to do it. For me, there's no reason, because like I'm going through full throttle with the podcast and some small other businesses that I'm doing with Bitcoin. So I have income. So I don't even have time to research that stuff. And I'm like, I don't want to deal with that right now. But it is something where I'm like, it is interesting and I really want to do it. But every time I research it, I'm like, those products are not quite there yet. Like, I don't know why we can do real estate with 3% for 30 years. Bitcoin is way better collateral. than real estate. Like you can liquidate it in any second. Like it's so quick. Liquidating real estate is so freaking hard. Like, why are we paying 13% for Bitcoin, but only 3% for real estate? So I don't know. That's the only reason that I really cannot do it right now.
Yeah, probably a couple of interesting comments, I suppose. One, I think not everyone's got access to the capital markets to the degree in which Saylor does. So, borrowing at, anything less than 10%, I agree, would be ideal. Saylor can borrow at less than 1. So, I don't know if he is necessarily, someone I could compare myself to personally. But then the other thing I would also say is a lot of these are starting to operate like a peer-to-peer market. And I would also argue that maybe that 12%, 13% rate is around the natural watermark for where a natural interest rate would sit without fiat manipulation. So if we expect inflation is more than what they tell us, certainly by measured CPI, like my personal inflation, I often estimate to be actually around 8 or 10%. So if I'm on the other side of that deal and I'm lending to you, I would need something above 8 or 10% because my personal inflation rate's about 8 or 10%. So it kind of makes sense to me. I agree. It's definitely something to swallow. And it's quite high in terms of being able to go to a traditional fiat institution and borrow at 3% for 30 years. The thing I'd say about duration is because they are so high, I actually don't mind having a shorter duration because we just simply don't know what's around the corner. So I would hate to be locked into a 4-year term paying 18% or something along those lines when we've got so much development happening in the space that I might be able to roll that out without penalty. For example, there's a whole heap of different things that might come into shortening your duration prematurely if you are locked into those type of things. And the other thing I would say is that I think more and more that peer-to-peer relationship, we're starting to see those interest rates come down a little bit. I'm, again, by no means an expert on that. But, Firefish, for example, you can go and put, as I understand it, I certainly haven't done it yet, but the research that I have done is you can go and put, I want to borrow X amount for X amount of time, and here's the interest rate I'm willing to pay, and you put it out to the market, and you'll either be met or you won't be. So, by all means, you can go out there and say, hey, I'll only pay 6%, but you might not find a match. So I think, that watermark starting to be found in those peer-to-peer markets, which I think's really interesting. Yeah.
It is definitely something. It's really nice. I just get why real estate is so much cheaper than real estate loans are so much cheaper. I guess it's also the competition. Like this borrowing against the Bitcoin is like just kind of getting started. And also what you mentioned, like it will come down. And yeah, definitely we will never get rates like Saylor got, like 0% or 0.5% or like 1%. Like that's insane. But I think having terms closer to what real estate gets. Real estate has cash flow. So there are some unique properties that real estate has that Bitcoin does not have. But it's just...
Yeah, I think the other thing I'd say with real estate in particular is, they work in a massive credit system. So the cost of capital for them's non-existent, right? They just add zeros to their balance sheet. Whereas when we're dealing with a Bitcoin-backed loan, in that ideal world, like they're subsidizing a lot of that credit by other money markets, their overnight lending, all this sort of thing that is built on top of that credit stack. It's not simply the interest rate they give you for your real estate. The interest rate they give you for real estate is certainly subsidized with the other things they do in that credit space. So I think, the important part with this evolving Bitcoin lending market is the fact that we don't want them rehypothecating. So there's not an overnight lending market or other ways that they can, I think, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe like Ledden actually has a product where they will openly say we will rehypothecate and you can get a cheaper interest rate, but we are rehypothecating. So it's all a risk profile. So I would much rather for example, pay 12% and know my Bitcoin's still there, rather than get 8% and know that they're, potentially rehypothecating. That's not anything against Leaden by any stretch, just using them as an example. And everyone's risk tolerance is different, but I certainly don't mind paying a premium. And when I think about it in Bitcoin's KEGA terms, that's obviously the trade-off you're making, is you're paying a high interest rate. But if I can keep the product, and I can keep the asset, so my asset versus liabilities is everything that I look at, right? So I'm talking about using a small percentage of overall stack to help fund lifestyle, certainly enough that you've got well and truly enough to cover the loan to value ratios, which is another topic we can probably spend a bit of time talking about. But you definitely want to be using a small portion of your overall stack so that you've got enough. You're not stuck getting liquidated in a loan, in a margin call. And probably the other point that which you raised, which was really interesting, that I've been sort of diving into, is this price oracle. So when you're entrusting a script, right, or a bit of code to enact the various stages of how that loan operates, whether that be your liquidation levels or your payout levels. And so you've got a few things, outside world data, that's got to come into that, like price oracle when you pay it off, or payment oracles, or then price oracles. So the trust in that mechanism as well is something that people should pay attention to. So you could imagine, if that price oracle wasn't fairly robust or trusted, that very easily they could liquidate everything with just wicking down the price. So you want to make sure that price oracle's a pretty trusted source as well, and that just the way that those scripts are constructed mitigate against unforeseen circumstances, which may be not in your best interest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to make sure that the safety nets and the safety zones are there, and like there's a lot of considerations on each individual situation. So there's I think that's really hard in that thing where you can have general rules. So you kind of have to look at situation after situation. One thing I'm also curious, another aspect of that. I mean, if you have a multi-signature, that's great. A lot of them, like Leaden, I don't know how Debify works, but they also, I think, don't have multi-signature. It's more of like Firefish that has multi-signature and smart contracts in there. And I like the idea of multi-signature. I really don't like the idea of giving an institution my Bitcoin and getting fiat in return. Like that's like a weird trade of like, oh yeah, like I just gave you a Bitcoin and I got 50K in back, like that. Like that feels wrong. Did I just sell my Bitcoin for 50K? like that seems like a weird trade to make. So I do like the multi-signature aspect of it. I don't know if it will be a long-term product that all the providers will do, because they probably want to do something with their Bitcoin long term. So I'm really curious on how the whole space will evolve.
Yeah, me too, to be honest. Certainly limping in. It's not something I'm rushing into. It's certainly taking my time and understanding everything. But it's important to know what options are available to you, right? So, if you get to that point in your life where you're lucky enough to take your foot off the throttle a little bit, like I said at the start, my intent is, if I can, is to avoid selling a Satoshi. But there's a fair degree of risk that comes with tapping into it in order to borrow against it. So do your own research, I suppose.
Most definitely, yeah. Really cool. Thank you so much, Des. We have a question that I asked each and every one of my returning guests, and the question is, what have you learned outside of Bitcoin since your last appearance?
Ooh, what have I learned outside of Bitcoin since my last appearance? That's really interesting. I think more than anything, I've really enjoyed the whole educating the kids space and navigating through that. So obviously being on the road for 12 months, we took the opportunity to pull kids out of school. So they're not going to school, and we're travel schooling them, or equivalent of homeschooling them. And I've learned a lot about the kids. I learned a lot about their the way that they learn. I've also learned a lot about me, the way that I teach and the way I understand things. But probably more than anything, it's in and around just that whole approach to schooling. So my eldest boy, he loves school. He can't wait to go back, which I thought a surprise to me, because I thought all kids hate school, right? Well, that's what I thought. I certainly did when I was a kid. But I thought him in particular would actually enjoy the time away from the formal education system. But if anything, he misses it the most. My youngest boy, he's 9. He could take it or leave it. He's really good. But I think probably the biggest thing I've learned out of this is just the different way to approach the options that are available to you if you do go down that route around homeschooling. So for us, we did a fair bit of research and we decided to buy a curriculum. And I'm glad that I did, considering that my eldest boy has expressed interest in going back to the formal school system. I thought it was important that we keep them up to date. Just excuse me a sec. Just going to open the door. I'm obviously in my mobile office in the car, being on the road, so just keeping the lights on here at 9:45 at night, so apologies. But yeah, so we decided to enroll in a curriculum where we had a bit of a framework around what it is that we're teaching them. So the important thing that we found then was really all we care about was math and English. Science we pick up on the road when we're going to various museums. There's science centres, there's all this sort of thing. We're certainly keeping a sort of eye on what they're supposed to be learning in science to make sure we can tick off a fair bit of that. But for me, math is really foundational. It builds and it builds and it builds. So we've made sure that they've maintained their maths, and they're up to speed. And the other thing I'm really grateful for the opportunity for was my eldest boy in particular. I never realised he's been a very good student over the past couple of years, like nothing to worry about. Certainly not a straight A student, but always consistent effort, consistent marks. And I picked up some really concerning gaps in his math game that I didn't know existed, because he's always performed quite well. So, just as an example, just the relationship between fractions and decimals and percentages. So a lot of that wasn't clear to him. Times tables needed a little bit of polishing up, that sort of thing. So if I hadn't taken this opportunity to do this year, we probably would never have known. And I'd hate to think that it would have developed into a worse problem as he starts to get into high school and going through that latter stages. So we found that having a curriculum, knowing where they need to be and having some resources available has been really, really helpful for us. It means that we don't have to waste too much time looking for resources on how to help him or where he needs to be. It was all there and prescribed for us. But also, the curriculum that we learned and the way that we've approached it, we don't have to report in on it to anybody. If they miss history, they miss history. If they miss geography, they miss geography, because a lot of that we're picking up on the road. Certainly I've always maintained that the most important thing for the kids is that they learn how to learn. Because if you learn how to learn and you can be an effective learner, anything is available to you as you get older. If you want to lean into sciences or engineering or, mathematics or whatever, if you have that fundamental knowledge and on knowing how to learn, learning how to learn, then the world's your oyster.
There's this great connection between homeschooling and Bitcoin. Like I've noticed that with so many guests that, a fair amount of my guests are homeschooling, and it's an incredible experience. And there's like kids that, they go back to school, or they go into private school, or they stay in home schools. Like I've seen many different evaluations of that. But there's a great connection between being independent from the school, teaching the kids yourself, and not relying on basically a third party to do your job as a parent. I guess that's it. Like as a parent, you do have kind of like a responsibility and a job to parent the kids in a way so they can learn and they can do math and be a functional member of society, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. And again, like it comes down, if both parents are slaving away doing 40 plus hours at work, it doesn't leave a lot of time for that connection. Like the homework's just done while you're prepping dinner. You know what I mean? Like you're not spending that quality time getting involved in their learning. And, you know, the parent teacher interviews that you get, 2, maybe 3 a year, and that are enough to keep you on top of. And the report cards you get every semester, you got no idea what's going on from day to day if you're not spending that quality time and that formative time going through and learning together, really.
And as you know, we have an end routine in the podcast where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. And the previous guest asked you, I don't know, maybe the most complicated question to answer ever. He asked you the question, if you had 1 month to prepare and were sent back to the year 1100 with only the knowledge in your head, no tools or materials, how would you prepare to have superpowers in the year 1100?
If I had 1 month to prepare to go back to that was a really long question. What would I do to prepare for the superpowers I'm going to have? Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's basically like, what do you do for 1 month in preparation to go back to this year when you cannot bring any tools or materials?
I think I just really, really study physical sciences to make sure I was like proper boss level. So obviously being an electrical engineer, I'd go back and I'd be taking most of that with me, right? Having a fundamental understanding of how that works, but I'd really properly double down on probably some engineering type of approach to how I would build a motor from scratch and so forth. So I have a fundamental understanding of it, but how would I actually go about with limited tools and resources going about to make that step change? Because you think about going back to the 1100 and you'd be able to take electricity with you, you'd be a magician, right? You'd probably be burned at a stake, actually. Maybe I'd just go like dark and quiet because they think you're some sort of voodoo man.
Yeah, that's the other thing, because innovators over the time have been how do I put it? Have been demonized from the mainstream. So if you go back and show them how electricity works, show them how to build motors, show them how to build engines and all those things, man, they probably think you're a witch.
It's an interesting thought process, that's for sure. Maybe I would. Maybe I'd just keep quiet.
Maybe just learning like a little bit ahead of the time. If you know exactly the year that you land in, just like learning the next like 100 years of advancements of like, okay, how can I make sure I'm good enough in that era without putting up any red flags.
Drawing attention to yourself. Yep. Good approach.
Really cool, man. I really enjoyed the talk. We went in a really interesting and deep conversations, I feel like, and it's just been an hour. Like it's so quick that goes over. Then thank you so much for being on. Before I let you go, where can people find you and ask you questions?
Yeah, for sure. It's just the usual Twitter and Nostr. So at DAZBEA on Twitter, and then on Nostr it's just at Daz DAZ. So happy to people to reach out and connect. And I do a little bit of work, if I can do a little bit of a free plug. So do a bit of work with the Bitcoin Advisor, so helping people with custody and inheritance planning, where we focus on collaborative custody multi-sig. So if that's of interest to you, and it's been something that's been on the back of your mind, and feel free to slide in the DMs, and happy to have a chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daz. And also thank you so much for everyone that is watching and listening, for joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye-bye. This content is for educational and entertainment purposes only and does not constitute financial advice.